Okay, let's try this again. Hello and welcome to my first free workshop. This workshop is called Update Your Resume for 2020. So I hope you can see me okay. I hope you can hear me okay. And I'm just going to wait about 60 seconds to let people join. This is my first time using Facebook Live, so if anyone cannot hear me or see me, please write a comment and I will see what I can do. Hopefully there's something I will be able to do. But yeah, I'm just gonna wait about 60 seconds to get started to see who joins, okay? So welcome, I see one person there. Please feel free to write a comment, say hello, but I'm going to wait another minute, okay? Let's see. Hello, welcome to my second viewer. Thanks for joining me. Oh, I'm just waiting a few minutes, maybe 60 seconds until people can join, okay? So during this presentation, if you have any questions, then please feel free to write a comment, and I'll probably answer the questions at the end. This should be about 30 to 45 minutes, and we're just going to talk about making the best resume for 2020. Okay, I'm going to get started now. So again, welcome to my first free workshop. It is called Update Your Resume for 2020. This workshop will be about 30 to 45 minutes, and at the end, I'm going to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, then you can please write a comment, and I will answer them at the end, or if it's something relevant to what we're talking about at the moment, I'll answer it right away, okay? So this workshop, we are going to talk about three major points. We are going to talk about resume design, resume content, and resume writing, okay? And these are all very important things, of course, and yeah. We're going to look at some examples. Some people have sent me resumes, people that I have helped to revise their resumes. So we're going to look at these examples and we're going to see what they did well or see what we can improve. Okay? Just to introduce myself very briefly, my name is James. I am a professional English language communications coach. I help non-native English speakers really feel comfortable communicating and advancing their careers in English-speaking companies. So my clients, they work for Amazon, Google, Korn Ferry, Netflix, international companies where obviously English is required. So let's not waste any time. I don't want to take too long today. So yeah, I don't have a screen sharing software on Facebook. It's a little strange, so I'm going to literally point my camera at my little presentation here, okay? So hopefully you can see this well. Hopefully you can still hear me. Again, any problems, and just put a comment, and we'll see what I can do. So yeah, this workshop is called Update Your Resume for 2020. Great. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is what is a resume? Because in Europe, you often hear companies will ask for your CV and not your resume. And in the United States, in other English-speaking countries, they're going to ask for a resume. Now, there actually is a small difference, okay? A resume is usually shorter. It's about 1 to 2 pages long, And your resume should absolutely change for each job application that you send. In your resume, you have more control. You have more creative control. So you can control the format. You can add the colors you want. You can add you can order the information in the way you want. And yeah, there's all sorts of things that you can do that you can't really do on a CV or a curriculum vitae. A curriculum vitae is allowed to be longer. Sometimes you'll see 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages. That's okay. It lists all your experience chronologically, and it does not change for different applications. And it has more details, right? You can list more of your accomplishments in each of these positions, and more of your responsibilities. So yeah, it's basically a running list of your work achievements, and that's what it means. It means the course of life, curriculum vitae in Latin. Now, one thing to know is that even when people ask for your curriculum vitae, they often actually want a resume, right? CV and resume are 2 words that have evolved to kind of have the same meaning, right? To mean the same thing. So what we're going to talk about today, you can send 2 jobs that that ask for a resume or that they ask for a CV. Okay, what we're talking about today, you can send to any job no matter what they really ask for. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the design of a resume. Excuse me 1 second. Okay, good. So why is the way you design your resume important? Okay, if anyone has any comments, please, again, you can comment here. But it's a good question. Like, why is it important to have a well-designed resume? And the most important thing when you're designing your resume is that the most important thing is that the key information, the most important information, is easy to find. So think about a good web page, right? If you visit a website like Google, it's a good easy example, or Facebook, the most important information is the first place that you look. Okay, so when you design your resume and you finish designing it and you look at it at the end, the first thing you should see should be your personal information. It should be your name, really, right? So the very first thing you should see on your resume is your name. If that's not true, if that doesn't happen, then you want to just start over, redesign your whole resume, right? Your resume needs to be easy to read. You don't want to use 4 different fonts. We'll talk about, you can have a little creativity, but definitely never more than 2 fonts, maybe 3, but let's stick with 2, okay? Avoid distractions, too many colors is not a good thing. You don't want to have like 5 different colors on your resume because it's just distracting, right? Someone's going to look at that and they're not going to know where to look, really. You want to have clear headings that separate each section, and you want to know your audience. And this means that, if you're applying for a very traditional law firm, for example, you're a lawyer, and you're applying for an old law firm, then you want to have your design be a little more conservative. Okay, you want to keep it simple, easy to read, professional. But if you're applying for a job as a designer, then you have a little more flexibility with your design. Okay, so let's look at a few examples that I have here. So this is a good resume right here. If I could just Scroll up. Okay, good. So hopefully you can see this okay. This is a woman named Jennifer. She has given me permission to share her resume. And she is looking for jobs as a graphic designer, right? She also works as a photographer and an office administrator. And as far as the design goes, you know, she's allowed to be a little more creative. Because she's looking for a job in a creative field, she has the privilege of doing things a little more creative. So she includes a photo, and we'll talk about photos in the next section, right? And her name is in kind of this cursive script. And if this were, if she were applying for a different kind of job, I would recommend against that, right? I would say don't do that. It's not a good idea because it's distracting. It's what we talked about. But because she is applying for jobs in creative fields, she has that kind of that license to do things a little differently, okay? So she also uses some colors, right? Because again, she's a graphic designer, so she can do this. And she did a good thing. She actually has 2 resumes. So she has this creative resume and kind of a more professional resume. So we'll talk about the good things and bad things there in a little bit. Now, I want to point out another resume that is very, very well designed. This is a client of mine. I helped her to redesign this resume. I helped her to make it a little clearer and stronger. And what I like about this one is really the color scheme and the font choice, right? So her name, which I blocked out, her last name, is in the top left. So if somebody holds that resume in their hands, that's the first place they're going to look, right? It's in big letters, it's clear, it's in a different color. Maybe you can tell there. So everything about this is really nice in terms of design. Then in her resume, she uses 2 colors, okay? So she has this red and this black. So it's not too distracting. It's not too much. It's not a lot of colors. It's just 2 very clear colors, okay? So this is good. This is an example of a nice design. When we talk about content, we'll talk about why her education is just small here and her work experience takes up more space. And then her skills section also, so she's going for a job in digital marketing. So you need to have some creativity in this line of work. So she decided to show her skills as kind of levels, right? So these are her strongest skills, which are going to be the most important for the job she's applying for. And she has some other skills down here, okay? Yeah, so this is a good design. Another one I want to show you is another client of mine. His name is Ivan. I've covered up his last name and his contact information. And we'll talk about the content because he's going to want to change the order of many of his things, many of his sections. But what I do really like is, again, he uses a red color. It's not very distracting. It's still a nice plain color that helps you see the important information first. Okay, so you see his name right away. You see his language, you see the sections, his languages, his skills. Each section is clearly divided by a small line here. So this is a very clean design, a little professional, but that's okay because it's easy to read. It's easy to find the right information. He uses bold headings for his job titles, right, and the dates. And that's very important. We'll talk about that when we get to content, okay? So yeah, this is a very nice, clean design. So we'll look at these resumes again, but I wanted to show you some examples of good design practices, okay? So yes, the most important information must be easy to find. The most important information is your personal information, your name and your contact information. It's your job titles from your former work experiences, right? These are the things that if your resume gets into an HR person's hands, this is what they're looking for. They're looking for your contact information, your job titles, and then if they're interested in that, they'll look more at the details of your responsibilities. Okay, so those really important things must be obvious to find. Easy to read, avoid too many colors or distractions, use headings to separate the sections. We saw this in Yvonne's resume. And again, know your audience, right? Do not send, let's look here. Do not send a resume like this, or creative resume, to a law firm, right? Or to a, I don't know, to a old computer hardware company. If you're applying for Dell, don't send them something like this, right? But for startups, for younger companies, this is something you can do, okay? A little better, but we'll get back to those. Great, so that's design. Now, again, if you have any questions or if you're just joining us, please write a comment and I will get back to you at the end. So we'll have some time for questions. But let's talk about the content. So what should be included in your resume? Okay. So think about it, right? If you have any comments, then go ahead, write them here. And yeah, just tell me, what do you think should be included in your resume? Good. So the first thing we talk about is, do you need a photo? A lot of people come to me before, with their first resume or their old resume, and it has a photo in it. And the answer is almost always going to be no. Okay, so let's look at these resumes here. Yvonne includes a photo, and if I were helping him to redo his resume, which I have not yet, then I would tell him to remove the photo. This is Anastasia's old resume before we got to it, before we worked on it together, and she didn't have a photo, and she still doesn't have a photo, right? And Jennifer here, who again gave me permission to share her information, she does have a photo, but that's okay for this kind of resume, okay? And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But the reason we don't include photos is because in most countries, especially in most countries, especially American companies and Western European companies, it's very, very illegal to make decisions based on how a person looks or what their name is, right? Or your perceptions of them. And so the reason I say don't include a photo is because we don't need to give them the opportunity, right? It's not necessary. It's not relevant to your application. Now, there are some exceptions to this. If you're applying to be a model, of course you're going to include a photo, right? In fact, you'll probably include a whole portfolio of your professional photos, right? Jennifer here, she includes one because she's a photographer, and especially because she's an events photographer, right? So if she is going to photograph someone's wedding or do family portraits, it helps her, because she's working more in freelance, that the people know what she looks like, right? So for her creative resume, it's completely okay. However, if you're applying for almost any corporate job, you do not want to include a photo, okay? Just don't do it. Resumes and CVs, like anything else, they have kind of trends, so things go in style and out of style, and photos for a while were very popular. People would want to see a photo on a resume, but nowadays it's not popular, okay? So avoid putting your photo on your resume, okay? What else? So the order that you include your information is important. So what goes first? Again, if you have any ideas, please feel welcome to comment. But what goes first? And the answer is usually your work experience. Unless you've just graduated from university and you are applying for your first job, then you want to put your work experience first. So if we look at some of these examples, Ivan puts his education first, and he told me that this is an old resume, and maybe he would change it now, but what I would do if I were helping Ivan, I would say take your experience and put it here at the top, okay? So your work experience goes first. And the reason is, this is what people care about, right? This is the most important thing. Okay. Just gonna close my window here. Okay. So yeah, work experience goes first. Then would be your education, and your education includes special certificates that you have, or any further education that you've done, anything like that. Okay. So all of that comes after work experience. And then after that, you're going to include your skills. And people ask me, like, should I include my English level, right? If you're here and you're likely a non-native English speaker, that's great. And so yes, you should include your English level and your original language and any other languages that you speak. So I would say put your English and your other languages underneath skills. Okay. And you should also say your level. If you have a certificate, that's great. You want to say what level, if it's C1 or C2 or B2. If not, just say I'm proficient or near fluent or conversational, depending on your level if you've never been officially certified. Okay, so what else do we want to include? Where you list your work experience, you're also going to list your main responsibilities. Okay, that's very important, because if your resume is reviewed by a human being and they become interested and they choose you for an interview, they're going to read about your responsibilities. Now, when we talk about content, it's important to remember one thing. In 2020, not every resume is looked at by a real human being. As a matter of fact, 95% of resumes, when you send them in for a job application, will not be looked at by a human being, right? Every big company now, they have artificial intelligence algorithms that look at resumes before they get to a real human being. Okay? Hello to my newcomers. Thank you for joining. If you have any questions, please write a comment, and I will get to them at the end of the workshop. Right, so before your resume is seen by a human being, it goes through a AI algorithm, right? And what the AI is looking for are a few things. They're looking for your former job titles to see if it matches the job description, and they're looking for keywords to do with skills, right? Now, where do we find these keywords? And the answer is we find these keywords on the job description. They're not hidden, right? The jobs, they want applicants who have the skills that will fit the job. They have the job opening that they have, okay? So for example, marketing specialist is a great title if you're applying for a job that says marketing specialist, okay? And then the skills, okay, Google Ads, you want to include that. SEO might be a keyword. These are all really important things. Okay, now there's something we have to say here. every time you apply for a different job, you need to create a slightly different resume. Okay? So, if the job, excuse me, if the job listing is asking for marketing specialist, you want to write marketing specialist, right? If the job listing has a different term, then you can also kind of change the term if, within reason, if it is still accurate to what you did in your last job, right? The skills that you highlight can change based on what's in the job listing. So Anastasia here, when she first came to me, let me show you this is her old resume. And she listed a lot of information under each job listing, right? And what I told her to do was to highlight different skills in each part. So she was a marketing specialist here and a marketing specialist here, and she worked in a lot of the same. She worked with Google Ads, she worked with Google Search Display Networks and these things. But what I told her to do was highlight specific skills in each job, right? So instead of repeating the same skills, make it shorter and highlight different skills in each past job, okay? And this is what we did. So instead of writing Google AdWords, Google AdWords, Google AdWords, in the first job, she highlights Google Ads. And in the second job, she highlights different skills like optimized website conversion rate, A/B testing, Google Analytics, right? So this way it's not repetitive. Now, based on what the job listing says, you can change which skills come first, right? So if the job listing is specifically looking for someone with experience in A/B testing or website conversion rates, she could take this bullet point and move it kind of up here, okay? So when that AI is searching this document, they're going to highlight those skills, and that's what's going to help them send it ahead. Now, one word of advice, you don't want to put too many keywords. This is something called keyword stuffing, and the AIs know how to look for that and know, oh, this person is trying to trick us, right? So use keywords, but not too many. Okay, let me go back here. Okay, so content. You don't need to include everything. I know this is hard, but there comes a point in your professional career where your oldest jobs, they don't actually matter anymore. Okay, hello, welcome to my newcomers. If you have any questions, please write a comment. I will get to questions toward the end. So at some point you need to let go of the internships that you had in university and your first job out of university, because they don't really matter anymore. So let's look at Yvonne's resume. It's a good example. Yvonne really lists everything, right? All the way back to, oh wait, sorry, not Yvonne, Jennifer. She really lists everything, right? All the way back to 2006 to 2008. Now, if she were applying for a job as a business coordinator or office manager, then yes, you still want to include these. And then she might remove other stuff, such as, program manager, photographer, right? But because resumes should generally be one page, or at most 2 pages, I would recommend to her to remove probably these last 2 jobs, right? And if you do include them, just include very few bullet points, right? So yes, we don't need to include everything. There are some things that don't matter. If you're applying for a job in programming and in your education system, in your education section, you talk about the certificate that you did in, I don't know, basket making, then you don't need to include that, right? It's a waste of space. You want to optimize your space as much as possible. Okay, so remember, we don't need to include everything. And then another common question that I get is, people ask me, James, should I include my interests or my hobbies? And the answer again is no. We do not need to include our hobbies on a professional CV or resume. I'm sorry, but most people don't really care. Now, there is some exceptions, of course, as always. If you're applying for a startup that seems to put an emphasis on company culture and, and they want to know more about your personality, you may want to include your hobbies. But really, you have to be the judge yourself. If it seems like that kind of company that's looking for interesting people who they want to spend time with outside of work, go ahead. But normally, no. Okay, so again, if you have any questions about what to include or what not to include, you can write a comment and we'll talk about that at the end. Now I want to talk about writing. The last thing, the last section of this is writing, okay? So resumes are not like interviews, right? When you're speaking, if you make a mistake, it's okay. I make mistakes all the time. Everyone makes mistakes when they're speaking in the moment, when they're speaking quickly, and things like that, okay? So on a resume, you cannot make any mistakes. So we talked in the last section about artificial intelligence, right? So an artificial intelligence will catch your mistakes, but they still might send you through. Now, however, if you get to a real person and they see a mistake, they're going to put you in the no pile, right? They're going to probably disqualify you. And it's not all the time. I must confess, one time I wrote a cover letter and I sent the same cover letter to 2 jobs, which is a bad idea. And I forgot to change the name when I sent it to the second job. And I actually still got that internship. This was in university. But I was lucky, right? Most hiring managers, especially such a big mistake like that, they would disqualify me immediately. And I don't blame them. I would do the same, right? So when you're writing your resume, you need to read it again 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and most importantly, we'll talk about this, get someone else to look at your resume. Do not be the only person that reads your resume before you send it. I know you might feel shy sharing it, but it's very, very important. Okay? You want to use action verbs. Okay, so your current job, if you have a current job, you're going to use the present tense. And for your past jobs, you'll use the past tense. But all of them should be action verbs. So let's look at a couple examples here. So you see Jennifer, she uses words like maintained, assisted, managed, facilitated, right? These are all great verbs. They're all in the past because this is a past job. And here's her current job, right? She says maintain, manage, bookkeeping, right? So it's really important to use these verbs because the alternative is people often say, they'll say responsible for doing this. The next bullet will say responsible for doing this, responsible for doing this. And that is boring, okay? That is, if you get to a human being and they read that, they will just be bored out of their mind. They'll put it in the no pile and you will not get a call for an interview, okay? So please, please use action verbs. We can see again in Anastasia's resume, she actually did a good job, right? This was before we looked at it together. Provided, built, organized, created, right? try to use variety, and then your new one, right? Implemented, ran, set. Yeah, so try to use a variety. Don't use the same verbs every time. And try to think of a good verb to say what you need to say. Okay? Okay. Take a drink of water here. In the last section, we talked a little bit about keywords. Again, keywords are what's going to help you get past the artificial intelligence, right? Because humans don't read resumes anymore. The average corporate job posting, as a matter of fact, gets 250 applications, right? And nobody's going to read 250 applications. So instead, they have an artificial intelligence sort them out, and a human might get the top 15, right? So you want to be in that top 15. So you need to make sure you read the keywords, you read the job description, and you find your abilities that match the job description. And that means writing a different resume, changing your resume for every job you apply for. I know it sounds tough, but it's very important. And again, like I said before, do not overdo the keywords. Do not include it in every line because you're trying to trick the artificial intelligence, because it simply doesn't work and it doesn't sound very good. Okay? Another thing, avoid company-specific terms, right? So some companies like Google or Disney, they use these creative terms, you know, chief happiness officer, right? Or happiness engineer. And that's great, but it's a great job title, but it doesn't translate to other companies. So if the artificial intelligence reads this, they're not going to know what to do with it, and they probably will not pass you through to the HR desk. Okay, so do some translation. If you have a specific job title that is unique to your company, then try to change it to a more general job title. Okay. And finally, be specific. Okay, so don't just tell me what your responsibilities are. Tell us what tools you work with. You know, what your goals are, what you have achieved in some cases. Though this will be more in the cover letter. But you know, don't just say responsible for improving website optimization, right? No, say something more like, okay, responsible for converting more visitors to our website into clients using this tool, and this tool, right? The more specific you are, the better it is, okay? And then finally, I cannot repeat this enough, get somebody else to look at your resume. Do not send your resume to a job that you want before somebody else has looked at it. That can be a professional like me, that can be a friend, that can be a colleague, right? But it's impossible to edit our own work, right? Even in my own slideshow here, I found an error because I didn't have anyone else look at this before I used it. So please do yourself a favor and get someone else to look at your work. Okay. So that's the end of the presentation that I have. So now I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions. I'm going to put the camera back on myself. Hello, thank you for joining me. I hope that you learned something in this workshop. There will be a recording available afterwards, and I also have a free checklist that you can download to make sure that your resume is ready before you send it to anyone. Okay? Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and write a comment. Again, this is my first time using Facebook Live, so I hope these comments appear where I can read them. I'm gonna drink some water. But yeah, I mean, my main points are really this, you know, change your resume for each job you apply for. You know, focus on the job listing that you're applying for and use those same keywords in order to make the best impression. Try to keep your resume to 1 to 2 pages. I know we saw some that are longer than that, but the best practice is 1 page. If you have to do a 2-column approach, a different design, that's great. If not, then if you go onto a second page, then use the whole second page, right? Don't have like a page and a half, okay? That just doesn't look very good. Yeah, no photos. That's an outdated practice. And don't be afraid to cut things off. You know, your old internships, your old jobs, your non-relevant educational experiences or certificates, just leave them off. I know. And of course, as I keep repeating, have someone else look at your resume before you send it. Now, of course, I am a professional. I help clients, to make their resumes look good when they're applying for English-speaking companies. Most of my clients are non-native English speakers. So at the end of this workshop, I'm going to send out a link that will give you an opportunity to work with me. Until March 1st, I will be doing a private one-on-one resume workshop for anyone who would like that for $30. After March 1st, the price will go back to the original price, which is $50. So I'm going to send a link. You can schedule your session whenever you like. And I really recommend doing that before March 1st. What does this include? It's a one-on-one private video session. So what happens is you will send your resume to me before we meet. I will look at it, I will change it, I will have some suggestions ready for you. And then we'll meet and we'll talk about those suggestions. The session length is 30 minutes. And I'll give you some ideas for how you can improve your resume. And then after that, you will have my suggestions. I'll have done some corrections in your writing, and you'll redo your resume. And then you can send it to me one more time, and I will just confirm that it is ready to be sent out to the job that you want. And hopefully you'll get a call, you'll get an interview, and you'll get hired. So I'm gonna end the session now. Thank you very much for those of you who watched me. Like I said, this is my first time. I'm a little nervous still, but I hope that you got some valuable information, and I hope to see you guys again. Okay. One question. Hello, I only attended the last part of it, but don't you think so? Yes. So to answer your question, each job you should really only list probably 3 to 5 bullet points is the general rule. And one of the things when you're editing your resume is seeing if you can keep the bullet points to 1 line, right? Because this will save you in space. You don't want to include too many details because then you'll go on to that second page. So that's a writing question, right? And that's a matter of editing the information in an accurate way so that you can have just 1 line bullet points, maybe 3 to 5 below each job. Yeah, so I can show you again. Let's switch back here to Anastasia's resume. So this was her resume before, right? One of my clients who I worked with. She has here like 12 bullet points, right? And her resume, of course, is 3 pages. So what I told her to do is, again, focus on a different skill set in each job. And also like things like this, we can edit a little bit to get down to 1 line. But by focusing on a different skill set in each job, she can still highlight all her skills, but without being repetitive. So it's really getting rid of repetition. So this is the new resume. All right, so we have 5 bullet points here, 5 bullet points here, and they highlight different skills. Okay. So this way, she's showing all her skills and still keeping the length short. That's a great question, right? You don't want to include too much, but it's possible. Now we have a lot of information, but it's not overwhelming, right? And again, she includes some keywords. She'll change those keywords for different jobs. But yeah, so a good question. The question was, you know, if I include too many details, won't my resume be too lengthy, be too long? And my answer was yes, it will. So you have to decide which details you want to include, and most importantly, you want to use your different previous jobs to highlight different skills instead of having repetition. Okay, thank you for your question, Farkan. And yeah, so does anyone else have any questions? I will, on the live video on my Facebook page, please feel welcome to post any questions, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I'm also going to send this recording to anyone who would like it. It will be available on my page, and along with an offer, my special offer to have a private resume workshop with me. Okay, so that again will be $30 until March 1st, at which time the price will increase to $50. So again, thank you very much for attending. I'm really happy to see you guys here, and yeah. If you have any questions, this video will be available on my feed. Thank you and have a great day.